Hello and welcome to Sports Mole's Football Shorts. I'm Barney Corkhill. I'm here with our football editor Matt Law, and we're here to discuss game week 6 of the Premier League season. Game week 5 saw one of us move out into the lead for the first time really this season, and unfortunately it was Matt. 10-point lead you've got now, Matt.
Yeah, it was a strong week for me, wasn't it? There's some twists and turns, I think, ahead. But to pull out 10 points is quite good this early on, so I'm pleased with that.
Yeah, still a long season, plenty of time for me to come back into it. And we start tonight, actually. There's a game, Aston Villa versus Leeds. Aston Villa have started the season so brilliantly, Matt. 100% record, the only team left with a 100% record in the league at the moment. They could move top with if they simply avoid defeat against Leeds in this match. Leeds, obviously, a bit of a mixed bag so far. They've been impressive in the way they've played, but lost at home to Wolves last time out. Sitting 10th in the table, 2 wins, 1 draw, 2 defeats from their opening 5 games, which, considering the teams they've played, you'd probably say Marcelo Bielsa would have taken before the start of the season. But this is a fascinating contest, isn't it? Villa in such good form, Leeds, such a good team. How do you see it going?
Yes, it's a really interesting one. I think the thing with Villa as well, obviously the best defensive record in the league, which is a little bit, surprising. They conceded twice in 4 games. Obviously, like you say, won every one of them. And I think the Liverpool game was a strange one because it was just such a strange game. And the next game after that one was always going to be sort of a gauge of how good a side they are. And to go and win at Leicester, obviously a late goal, fantastic result, and leave them strong in the table. The Leeds Wolves game was, I wouldn't say Leeds were disappointing, but it was a little bit. It was not a massively entertaining game, was it? Let's be honest. I'm quite looking forward to that one, and it was a little bit not too much happening. Obviously, Wolves scored in the end, and Leeds. Yeah, I still think they've got a little bit to prove. Obviously, they've started well, played excellent against City. Obviously, played well against Liverpool as well. But I still think these are the type of games that, because they play Leicester after this one, these next couple you'll just see really what they're going to be this season, what kind of side, and where they're going to finish. Expecting a tight game, to be honest. I was leaning towards Villa, but I do like Leeds, and obviously they've got a lot of good players. It's nice and solid, so I've gone 1-1 in the end.
1-0, yeah. This is one of actually quite many this week that I really struggled to call it. I could see it going either way. I don't see Villa's perfect start lasting too much longer. I think they are a good team. We've already spoken about the good transfer business they've done. They're a much improved team from last season, but they certainly wouldn't have expected 4 wins from 4, and they wouldn't expect this winning run to go on too much longer. Having said that, I do see them getting a victory here. They should be full of confidence. The win at Leicester, and obviously following up that 7-2 win against Liverpool, they'll be absolutely buzzing at the moment, full of confidence, and they'll believe 100% they can get another win from this game. And I'm actually backing them to do so. As impressed as I have been with Leeds so far, I'm backing Aston Villa to win this one 2-1. Okay, moving on to Saturday. The first game on Saturday is West Ham versus Manchester City. Man City have traditionally very much enjoyed themselves at West Ham. I think they've scored at least 4 goals on all of their previous visits to the London Stadium. But West Ham themselves are in good form, beat Leicester 3-0 before the international break, and then launched that incredible comeback against Tottenham last time out, didn't they? 3-3. Manuel Lanzini, what a goal that was to win it late on one of the best moments in recent Premier League history. That's got to be to complete that comeback with such a goal late on. Another good game. It won't be an easy test for Man City, who haven't been entirely convincing this season, but have started to return to form now. How do you see this one going, Matt?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, isn't it? Like you say, West Ham, when they were 3-0 down, you only expected it to go one way, and 3-0 Bale comes on, and it's sort of West Ham from nowhere managed to pull it back. And I do think West Ham, I do quite like them this season. They've got some really good players. I think Souček is a fantastic player in the middle of the park. Obviously got depth in the squad. Obviously Ben Rama coming in, obviously managed to get the deal done in the end after a little bit of at the end it looked like it was difficult to do. And if you run through their players, and they've got some obviously Lanzini. I know he's not been fantastic, but he's capable of what he did late on. He's a great player. And they've got players like Bowen who work hard, Antonio. There's a lot, I think, going for West Ham at the moment. City, the Arsenal game was a big one for me, a big win. It wasn't, they were dominant, but it wasn't sort of a thumping win against Arsenal, which they've enjoyed in the past. It was a 1-0, and I think the clean sheet, obviously hugely important for Guardiola, and played well against Porto as well. A good side, Porto, good European pedigree, and good to start with a win. So obviously, league table, not too much this side of the season. City got 7 points. Obviously, top is Everton with 13 at this stage, but obviously with a game in hand. So I don't think you need to pay too much attention to the table at this stage. It's just about putting together a run of form and expecting a tight game. West Ham do play well against the big sides. They're capable, like I say, of picking up big results. But I've gone City here just 2-1.
Yeah, I've gone exactly the same. I think West Ham, we mentioned after their opening day, that they could be in real trouble with the difficult run they've got coming up. But as you say, then they've done really well in most of those games, beating Leicester, beating Wolves, drawing with Tottenham from 3-0 down. And I do see them giving Man City a much better game this time than they have in the past at the London Stadium against Man City, or home or away against Man City. They've got a dreadful record against them since Guardiola took over. I do see Man City coming away, as I say, with same scoreline as you, 2-1. But Man City do have defensive issues at the moment. They have injury issues. There's not sure if De Bruyne might be back for this one. There's also question marks over Aymeric Laporte. And other Fernandinho is obviously out now. So defensively, they're a bit depleted. So I do see West Ham getting on the score sheet. But yeah, I think Man City do have enough in them to get the victory in this one. 3 p.m. on Saturday is a London derby between Fulham and Crystal Palace. Fulham, right at the bottom of the table, 1 point from their opening 5 games. Did get that opening point against Sheffield United last time out, unable to hold on to the lead in that match. Crystal Palace, pretty fortunate to get away with a point against Brighton over Albion in their own derby. Obviously, Zaha scored from the penalty spot in that game, but then they got pretty much battered by Brighton and rarely offered a threat, and Brighton finally got their deserved equaliser late on. So this is another interesting one. Obviously, Roy Hodgson returning to Craven Cottage, where he had great success as a manager. Palace, they're a difficult one to call as well. Their away record is dreadful, with the exception of a 3-1 win at Old Trafford, which is quite bizarre. They haven't scored in 6 of the last 7, I think it is, away games, and that United game is the only exception. So, you know, as a Fulham side struggling to keep clean sheets, you can't really wish for a better team to face right now visiting Craven Cottage if they are to keep that first clean sheet. Whereas likewise, Crystal Palace can think of a better team to face than Fulham with their poor defensive record. So it's an interesting one between, you know, a poor attacking record and a poor defensive record. Interesting to see which one comes out on top. I've actually gone for Palace in this one. I really find it hard to back Fulham at the moment. I don't see them having enough to stay up or really get too many points throughout the season. This game, they've got a big game against West Brom coming up after this. I think this one, Crystal Palace will really fancy the chance of getting back to winning ways in this one. I've gone 2-1 to Palace.
Yeah, gone exactly the same. Gone 2-1 Palace in this one. I was going to go a bit more Palace, to be honest, maybe 3-1. But like you say, it's strange. They played twice this season on the road. Obviously, beat United, lost to Chelsea, and they were really poor against Chelsea. Obviously, excellent against United. So you'd never know what you're going to get from them on the travels, which can be frustrating, I think, for the manager. Obviously, you're not too sure what performance your players are going to put in. But yeah, Fulham, like you say, I think that's the point really, that it's hard to back them, isn't it, in any game? You look at any game, you look at probably, I mean, next week, Fulham, West Brom, can you back them in that game? It's just so difficult. You know, you can make a case for a draw, but I don't really know there's a game coming up where I can say I really fancy Fulham here. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me massively if they did win this game, because this is the type of game that they would end up winning. But you know, last time out conceding late on against Sheffield United is a big blow, because to get a win there would have been, you know, could kickstart their season. Obviously, they lost to Wolves. And to be fair, the last 2 have been better, obviously, since losing to Villa. You know, only lost 1-0 at Wolves, and Sheffield United got a point. So I think they are slowly edging in the right direction. But like you, I still don't think they've got anywhere near enough, to be honest, to stay in the league. So, yeah, 2-1 Palace here.
Both gone 2-1 Palace there. Okay, probably the standout fixture is Manchester United versus Chelsea on Saturday, 5:30 kickoff. Manchester United coming into it off the back of another famous win in Paris night in midweek. Great victory for them, and a really good performance actually against an under-par PSG side. Chelsea drew 0-0 with Sevilla in midweek in the Champions League, and obviously threw away the lead twice against Southampton late on, another 3-3 draw, conceding more goals again. The defence is the big problem there. It's a big game, obviously. How do you see it going?
Yes, it's a massive game. I think, you know, Chelsea only won 1 of the last 5 in all competitions. You know, I think for all the pressure that's put on Solskjaer, there isn't that much put on Lampard, if I'm honest. I mean, he spent a lot of money. I know last season he didn't, and this will be the gauge this season, how well he does. But, you know, there's a lot of pressure put on Solskjaer. But the last 2 games, obviously, for United, the Newcastle one was a big one. And obviously, after conceding so early, it would have been easy to, you know, fall by the wayside. But they played excellently. I thought, obviously, the scoreline is flattering in the sense that the goals came late on, but I don't really think it is in the sense that they were very, very dominant in that game. You know, Newcastle didn't really have a period in the second half where they were putting pressure on. Obviously, David De Gea's performances have been really good the last couple. He's made some excellent saves in the last 2 games. And suddenly you've got a situation where, you know, Telles is coming to the team, excellent debut. Cavani's now available. You've got options in the final third. Obviously, Greenwood, it looks like he'll be available this weekend. Maguire should be back. And suddenly, you know, Tunzebi's performance, fantastic. So suddenly there's a lot of positives, there's a lot of negatives, and I think it's important to point out the positives. Obviously, there's still a lot for United to work on, and it'll be a huge test. But they do like playing Chelsea last season, played excellently against them both games. Obviously, a 4-0 at Old Trafford, and I was at the game at Stamford Bridge, and they played very, very well in that game as well. So it'll be very interesting to see the formation. I think for Solskjaer, will he play 5 at the back again? Shaw as a centre-back, Tellez left wing-back. Obviously, Fernandes will be in the team. Pogba, will he be back in? I don't think he should be personally. I think Fred and McTominay were fantastic in United's last 2 games. So, huge game. And I do. It's a draw or a United win for me. I just don't see them getting beat at home. I know that you're going to mention maybe their home record's not great this season, have been poor, but just United here 2-1.
Yeah, I'm not backing Chelsea to win, but I've just gone for a draw here, and I know I probably haven't backed Manchester United enough this season. I've gone for a draw with most of their games, but as you mentioned, their home record, their aggregate score, their 2 Premier League home games at the moment is 9-2 defeat, and it goes further back. I think it's 4, maybe 5 Premier League home games without a win now for them. So it goes further back than just these 2 this season. Obviously losing to Palace and Tottenham that 6-1 in the last home game away from home, they look unstoppable. That win against PSG, I think, was their 10th in a row, 10th away win in a row, which is an incredible record. But at home, they're just having a lot more trouble. And Chelsea certainly have the tools to really trouble their defence. At the same time, Chelsea's own defence is far from strong. So I can see goals in this game. Struggling to separate them, to be honest. Chelsea, there's always goals guaranteed in their away games at the moment, it seems. It's just inconsistent as to which end they come out, because they're conceding a lot and scoring a lot. So it's an interesting one for me, this one. I wouldn't be surprised to see Manchester United win. I wouldn't be too surprised to see Chelsea go and get the win, but I've sat on the fence a little. I've gone for a 2-2 draw in this one. Rounding off Saturday's action is Liverpool versus Sheffield United. Liverpool obviously coming off into this match off the back of their win against Ajax in the Champions League, but they're without a win in the last 2 Premier League games. Most recently, that Merseyside derby draw against Everton, which the less said about the better, I think. I don't quite know how that ended as a 2-2 draw, with Everton only having 10 men on the pitch still. But the less said about that, the better. Sheffield United are in desperate need of a victory, aren't they? They've got their first point finally against Fulham, but they would have been viewing that game as a pretty much must-win game. The way they started the season, the positives from that Fulham game was that they ended a 7-game losing run and got their first point on the board, but to have needed a late equaliser against the Fulham side that have been so poor themselves just to get the first point of the season was disappointing. Their attacking record is poor against the Liverpool side, obviously now without Virgil van Dijk. So Sheffield United, Liverpool can't really wish for a better opponent than Sheffield United at the moment in their current circumstances, I don't think. Sheffield United haven't taken the lead at any point so far this season. They're the only Premier League team yet to have that. So for Liverpool, it looks like an ideal match, this, to come back after such that scarring experience in many ways against Everton last time out. Liverpool, obviously, I think they've conceded more goals than any other team in the Premier League since they won the Premier League title, and that was even with Virgil van Dijk in the team and with Alisson in the team for most of it. So without Van Dijk, without Alisson, as they will be for this match, I think visiting teams will always fancy their chances. But as I say, the way Sheffield United have been playing this season, this is pretty ideal for Liverpool. So I've gone for a 2-0 win, and it's probably the scoreline I'm most confident. One of the only scorelines I am actually confident about this week that I've got right. I think Liverpool 2-0 in this one.
I'll just ask you, Barney, do you think Liverpool still win the league with Van Dijk out?
I think it'll be a lot closer. It probably won't be 18 points again, let's put it that way. But I think it's going to, there's no doubt how big a miss he's going to be. I think Fabinho has done excellently in the 2 games he's filled in so far this season against Chelsea and against Ajax. He's been brilliant. And I think as long as, you don't suffer more injuries in that area, we only really have to last until January. And I think probably we can do that while staying in the mix and then bring someone in January. But there's no doubt it's a big loss, and it's not just his defensive skills. I don't think either of the goals against Everton go in with Van Dijk on the pitch. I think he does more against Calvert-Lewin in the air, and certainly for the corner, he commands that area. So I don't think either of those go in with Van Dijk in the pitch. So we'll concede more goals, but with the firepower we've got at the other end, and I think the other things we'll miss with him is his leadership. He's always talking, telling people where to go on the field, and his passing. If people try and press us, he's got the ability to ping a 60-yard pass with either foot up to Mane or Salah on the wing. So we'll miss a lot with him for sure. But I certainly think we'll still be up there, and we are able to compete for trophies without Van Dijk. It'll just obviously be a lot closer and a lot tougher without him, because he's the best defender in the world.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You're talking about going and getting another player in, but as you know, United have found it's not easy to go and get centre halves at the moment. Obviously, we've spoken about this a few times, haven't we? It's not easy to go and, Koulibaly's the one you're speaking about, but it'd be very interesting to see. But yeah, in terms of this game, like you say, it's a nice game for Liverpool. I think, at risk of repeating myself, but I do worry for Sheffield United quite badly this season. I think, some of the press conferences recently from Chris Wilder, he said about injury problems, maybe theirs is a little bit worse than Liverpool's, even with Van Dijk being out, and we've got some key players missing. They haven't won yet this season, like you say, last time out against Fulham. It's not a good result, is it? I know they nicked a point late on, but it's not a good result at home to Fulham, with respect, and play quite well at Arsenal. But yeah, I fear for them this season. And like you mentioned, Liverpool, that Merseyside derby was, remarkable, really. It was a lot of different things happening, and that you could talk about that for hours and hours, what actually happened in the game. But yeah, like you say, it'll be very interesting to see this season what Liverpool do. Fabinho going back there, obviously he was excellent against Ajax, wasn't he, in the Champions League, putting a really 5-star performance, and he's more than capable of playing there, but then it takes away his ability in the middle of the park, which is obviously huge as well. But yeah, Liverpool 3-0 here.
Liverpool 3-0 to Manchester to Matt. I think the reason I've gone 2-0 is Sheffield United don't often get beaten too big, but yeah, 3-0 for Matt in that game. Okay, moving on to Sunday, we've got Southampton versus Everton. Everton, obviously the other team involved in that Merseyside derby, which was action-packed. Benefited from the VAR decisions, the highly controversial ones for Pickford not being punished for that challenge, and the late Jordan Henson goal chalked off for the narrowest of offsides. Obviously, they're doing fantastically. League leaders. Those were the first drop points of the season. Really feel-good factor around the club at the moment under Carlo Ancelotti, and with Dominic Calvert-Lewin in such good form, James Rodriguez in good form. Obviously, he's missing this weekend, which will be a big blow for them. But Southampton also come into this match feeling good about themselves. They're unbeaten in the last 3. Launched that comeback late on to nick a point against Chelsea last time out. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, it's a really, really interesting one, isn't it? Like you say, Everton been so impressive this season, So I think a lot of obviously what happened in the Merseyside derby takes away from their performance in that game. And don't get me wrong, I think Liverpool did deserve to win overall, but I did think Everton were really good as well. And obviously Calvert-Lewin, great form. That goal he scored, and there's a lot of mention of Rodriguez and players like that this season. But Lucas Digne at the back, for me, left back, I think he's fantastic. He's one of the best, obviously defensively. Can get caught out, but going forward, he's just such a threat. The balls he puts into the box, and obviously with Calvert-Lewin so good in the air, that's obviously going to be a huge threat for Everton this season. And yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I think Southampton coming back to Chelsea, I think the important part of that game, Che Adams getting his first goal of the season. Obviously a lot of talk about Danny Ings, who's been fantastic. I think he's got 4 goals this season, 4 league goals, But Che Adams getting that goal as well up there. Obviously Walcott going back to Southampton, he played quite well in that game. Obviously he had a role in Southampton coming back, so huge point for them. But Southampton's home form, performance at home is not quite there yet in terms of consistency. But yeah, to be honest, this has got a draw written all over it for me. I've won a few goals, gone 2-2.
Yeah, I've gone a draw as well in this one. I thought you'd go for an Everton win, to be honest. But I've gone for 1-1 in this. I can see Southampton with Danny Ings in their team. He just seems to score pretty much every game. He seems to open the score in most games as well. So I can see them getting a goal. But Everton in this good form, I can see them getting a point as well from it. So I've gone 1-1 in that match. Also on Sunday, Wolves versus Newcastle. Wolves winners against Leeds last time out, weren't they, to move up to 6th in the table. Newcastle beaten, as mentioned, by those 3 late goals against Manchester United, but were second best for long spells of that game. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, it's an interesting one for me. Obviously, Wolves, last couple of results for me have been huge. Obviously, there's a few question marks, wasn't there? They lost at West Ham, lost 4-0, and were really poor in that game. But last couple, 2 1-0 wins. And for me, I love a 1-0 win. They talk about goals and stuff, but a 1-0 win is quite satisfying, isn't it? And managers like that, a clean sheet, 3 points, and 6 quick points on the board against Fulham and Leeds. The Leeds game was a big one for Wolves. It was a scrappy game, and it was always going to be, 1 goal wins it type of thing. So that's an important result for them. And Newcastle were really poor against United. As good as United were, I think they started, obviously had that great start, but they just never really got into the game after that. Joe Linton was a bit lost up there with Wilson. Obviously, Shelby never really got on the ball, and they were at the back. They were quite open. Obviously, United, they played quite a high line against United, which surprised me. Obviously, with the pace of Rashford and obviously Fernandez's ability to feed that pace. So, yeah, interesting one for me. And to be honest, it's a home win. Newcastle, picked up some big results this season, picked up a really good point at Tottenham, but obviously really, didn't have much of the ball in that game. So, yeah, home win 2-0.
Yeah, I've gone exactly the same as this. I think Newcastle was sort of hovering in that space between probably be good enough to avoid a really serious relegation battle, but are they good enough to really push for the top half? I think they're hovering in that. Whereas Wolves, again, will be looking to push for Europe this season. So I can see 2-0 in that one as well to Wolves. I think they've got off to an okay start to the season. They might have fancied the chances of doing a bit better than 3 wins and 2 defeats so far, but it's hard to see past the Wolves winning this one, so I've gone for 2-0 as well. Rounding off Sunday's action is Arsenal versus Leicester. This is a big game between two top 4 hopefuls. Arsenal will be pretty pleased at their start to the season. Obviously, they lost at Man City last time out, but gave it a much better go than they have done in a lot of recent games against Man City. And they're not quite, obviously, at Man City's level yet, but I think there were signs that they've certainly closed the gap under Arteta and, again, are moving in the right direction. They weren't convincing at all in midweek against Rapid Vienna. They needed 2 goals in that game quite late on to come from behind to beat the Austrian side. But Leno had a bit of a shocker in that game. I made the mistake to concede the goal and made a lot of more mistakes, which could have conceded more. So Arsenal rode their luck a little bit to get the win in that game. But the win was on the board. Leicester were also winning ways in the Europa League with their 3-0 win over Zoya. But in the Premier League, since that 5-2 win over Man City, which really made people sit up and take notice and maybe think Leicester could push for the top 4 again this season, they've lost at home to West Ham and at home to Aston Villa without scoring a goal. So they really need to get back to winning ways in the Premier League. And this is a difficult place to do it against Arsenal. It's a difficult one to call because Leicester do have that quality, as we saw against Man City. That Man City game was their last away game in the Premier League, so they've got the quality to cause these big teams serious problems, particularly with their playing style and the players they have at their disposal. But Arsenal, I think the form they're in and the feel-good factor around the club, if you actually look at their results and the form doesn't stand out as being really good, but I think the performances are offering a lot of encouragement. So I've gone for an Arsenal win in this one. I've gone 3-1.
3-1, yeah. I've gone a draw in the end. I just think, obviously, Leicester, it looks like Vardy might come back into the team for this one. As we know, he loves playing against Arsenal. I think it's 10 in 11 games, league games against them. And obviously, if he can come back into the team, Maddison obviously getting on the score sheet. He's obviously had his problems, injury problems, and to come back for the Europa League game. I think obviously both sides have had other commitments. They both played Thursday, so they're going to be short turnaround time in terms of preparation. Obviously, there were changes from both sides, and a lot of the big players will come back in. I think for Fortuna, Leicester centre back they brought in looks a good play. Obviously very early stages, he looks a real find. Obviously, a few clubs have looked at him in the past and good player. But yeah, I just think Leicester. We look at how well they played against City and Arsenal. Obviously, Arsenal against Manchester City, I thought they played well. Obviously, it was another defeat though. It wasn't a pasting which they've had in the past. Obviously, a 1-0, but never really felt that Arsenal were going to get anything from the game. And if it did go 1-1, you felt City might score again. Obviously, City were missing some key players as well in that game. So, yeah, both identical records this season. 3 wins, 2 defeats from 5 games. Obviously, sitting towards the top end of the table. Yeah, and I see we're coming from Arsenal. I think Vardy potentially being back would be huge for Leicester. And, 2-2 here.
2-2 for Matt in that one. Okay, on to Monday night, and there's Brighton versus West Brom. 2 teams in growing need of a victory. They both sit just above the relegation zone. They've probably had contrasting starts to the season. West Brom have been all right with draws against Chelsea and Burnley so far, but they haven't looked particularly convincing. Still yet to get their first win on the board, which would be big for them. Brighton, on the other hand, have actually looked pretty good, but have only got 4 points on the board. So I think 4 points from 5 games doesn't really reflect how well they've done. They were much the better team against Crystal Palace, arguably the better team against Manchester United when they won that game. Van Chelsea really close in that defeat, so they haven't really got the points their performances suggest. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, I think we both quite like Brighton, don't we? Quite like the way they play. Obviously, Graham Potter's a very, very good head coach, but I think that's a little bit worrying that they're playing well and getting beat or drawing. It's a little bit because it says that maybe there's something not fundamentally wrong with them in terms of inability to pick up points, but I think defensively they do ship some goals. Obviously, last time against Palace they played really well and obviously only conceded once in that game, but 4-3 and a 3 in their 3 games before that, and that would be concerning for me. Obviously, West Brom, I still think I think West Brom will go down this season. Obviously, they've invested in the squad. They've not been afraid to spend money, brought quite a few players in, but I just do fear for them. The Chelsea game was he played well, 3-0 up, but conceded 3 late on, and obviously sitting 2 draws. It's not been in the end. It's not been a hugely horrific start. 2 draws, 3 defeats from 5 games for a newly promoted club is not horrendous, but they do really, really need to put a win on the board. And it's a tough one because I think Brighton will start to win eventually. I think they're playing too well not for that to be the case. And I think Brighton will win here. I've gone 2-0.
Yeah, again, I've gone exactly the same as you. I think that this is a nice fixture for Brighton. I think West Brom at home will be a nice fixture for most teams. And with Brighton needing to get some points on the board after playing so well, I've gone for them to win 2-0 as well. Rounding off the game week is Burnley versus Tottenham. Burnley are another one of those teams without a win so far this season, in growing need of a victory with 1 point from their 4 games so far, 3 defeats and 1 draw. Obviously, that is. Tottenham are in really good form since losing on the opening day against Everton. I think they're unbeaten in 9 games across all competitions, and they're scoring for fun at the moment. Pretty much the second string side cruised to victory in the Europa League with another good performance. They look like they've got depth. They look like they've got really good players in a lot of areas of the field. Harry Kane and Son Heung-min obviously in incredible form at the moment, tore West Ham apart in the early stages of that game. The concern obviously is how they collapsed in that game, and the Spursy tag got levelled at them and got rejected by Mourinho, but it got levelled at them to collapse from 3-0 up in the 81st minute against one of your main London rivals is certainly not the sign of potential title winners, which I think after 20 minutes of that game some people were tipping them to be, because the way they had performed against Manchester United, hit Maccabi Haifa for 7 recently, beat Chelsea, knocked them out of the EFL Cup. They're picking up good results. They've got world-class players in a lot of positions now, so they've certainly got the quality, but they need to stamp out those sorts of collapses that happened against West Ham. Obviously, that is a pretty exceptional example. The West Ham game is the first time from the 81st minute that's ever happened in Premier League history, so that's certainly not going to happen every week, but the defence will still be an issue. In terms of attack, no one scored more in the Premier League so far this season, so there's absolutely nothing wrong there. And coming up against the Burnley side, which was really struggling so far this season, only scored 3 goals themselves. They'll fancy their chances of coming away with victory, and I fancy their chances too. I've gone for a pretty comfortable 3-0 Tottenham winning this one.
I thought I was going to go the same. I've gone 3-1 in the end. I do fancy Burnley to score, and for the reasons probably you've mentioned, obviously, I just don't think they really were near good enough defensively, Tottenham. I think when Davinson Sanchez, when we played for Ajax, didn't he, against United in the Europa League final, he was so good, such a young talent in the game, and I never really think he's properly cemented his spot at the back, and I still think they've got issues there. Obviously, like you mentioned, Europa League, obviously Vinisca's coming into the team and playing really, really well. I think he set up 2 goals in that game, but he's obviously, his Premier League minutes are going to be determined by Harry Kane, when he needs a rest, when he needs a little bit of a, taking off 20 minutes to come. He's not going to be starting many games, which he would have, been more than aware of because of how good Harry Kane is. So, yes, it's a big game. Obviously, Burnley are one of those ones. I'll put them in the same bracket as West Brom that I do. West Brom, Sheffield United, around them, a little bit fearful of them this season. Obviously, not been great, and I think they play Chelsea next. Could be wrong. I think it's Chelsea at home after this one. So Tottenham, Chelsea at home, back-to-back games. If you get beaten both those, suddenly you could be entering, the month of November, at the bottom of the table, and it's a long season, but long seasons can quickly. November becomes February quite quickly, and then you're suddenly thinking, "Cool, we might be a little bit of trouble here." So I can't see Burnley winning this game, to be honest. I think Tottenham have got far too much going forward. I think they'll score, but 3-1 Tottenham.
Yeah, I think with Burnley, they always either seem to be in a relegation battle or pushing for the top half, don't they? There's no sort of middle ground with them, and I think this season looks like being a relegation battle season for them. Okay, thanks, Matt. Those are our predictions for game week 6. We'll be back next week with our next round of predictions, of course. You can follow all of those games. You can find previews for them, news building up to them, and features for all those games and many, many more matches over on sportsmoral.co.uk. You can also subscribe to this podcast on all the usual channels, and you can subscribe to follow us on YouTube so you don't miss an episode. Okay, thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon.